Hey everybody, it's me, Cyrus. Well, today I want to talk to you about the Neo Geo. I used to be the proud owner of a Neo Geo AES. I actually have owned two of them in my lifetime, believe it or not. This is a picture of the Neo Geo AES that I used to have until just I don't know, maybe a couple years ago. Maybe not even that long. I don't remember exactly how long ago I sold it, but it hadn't been that long. But I sold my Neo Geo. At the time, I was going through some financial stuff and I needed the money. And I had come to the conclusion that I just really was never going to be happy owning a Neo Geo. Now, that might sound like sacrilege if you're somebody who's always wanted a Neo Geo AES. But let me explain what happened. So, the first Neo Geo that I owned was one that I bought from Japan, and it was just a stock Neo Geo AES. I got a pretty good deal on it. This was a few years ago. I think it's been about 7 years now since I bought that one. And I got it, and I had a few cartridges, and unfortunately it was just a stock unit, so I was never very happy with the video quality that it output. It wasn't that great. The video quality, as long as I used composite, it was fine on a CRT, but if I wanted to do anything else with it or look at it with the RGB output using component conversion, or if I wanted to try to capture video from it, it just didn't put out the best signal. It is what it is. So I ended up selling that one because I just wasn't that happy with it. Years later, I saw a pretty good deal on another AES, and it was modded. And it had the jail bar fix done. It had the Unibios 4 installed on it. It was nice. It was a nice one. So I ended up buying it, and I bought a few cartridges. Again, nothing too major, because the cartridges are just ridiculously expensive for this thing. But one of the great things about having the Unibios was I could go in and change the region and the different versions of the game and play the actual arcade version. Whether I bought the Japanese cartridge or the US cartridge, I could still see the US version if I wanted to. It was pretty cool. The problem is, it's just so expensive. And another problem I had is these joysticks. They look cool as hell. I always used to dream about having a Neo Geo because I was like, oh man, look at these joysticks. But I'm going to tell you, they're not that great. The stick is pretty good. The stick is okay. It's got micro switches. It's nice. I put a bat top on that one, you can see there. But the buttons are just not good. They're very low quality buttons. I don't know what's up with that, but unfortunately, yeah. So they're not that great. They're very light. The plastic feels kind of cheap. So that's kind of disappointing. You could get aftermarket joysticks and replace them and everything, but I never did. And thinking about replacing the joysticks started a whole bunch of questions in my head about, like, well, if it's not going to be a Neo Geo AES, what am I doing? And that was a question that sort of kept coming up over and over in my head. But I still had my Neo Geo. I would break it out occasionally and play the few games that I had. I wasn't going to get a flash cartridge. They make like these Neo Geo EverDrive things. There's a few different versions. I looked into getting them, and they were really expensive. I mean, for one of those cartridges, it was like $500. And if anything was to go wrong with that cartridge, then I wouldn't have any games. If I spent $500 on that, then I was putting all my eggs into that basket. And I was reading things about those flash cartridges having compatibility issues with certain games, with certain hardware, and voltage issues, people saying strange things. Wasn't real good. I wasn't real happy with that, so I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. The other solution that people had told me that I could do for the Neo Geo AES is they make converters to play MVS, the arcade cartridges, on the home systems. But again, there's problems with that, and voltage issues come up again. Depending on which converter you're talking about, you might not even be able to find the one that you want. There's compatibility issues again. Some of them work with certain games and not others. There's just problems. And then it was like, is the pins gonna mess up the pins in your system? There's a bunch of issues, okay? So I just was not happy with any solution for using a real Neo Geo to play Neo Geo games. But I was still sticking with it. It was fine. I just didn't have very many games. And I didn't play it very often because it's a big system. There's a lot to it. If you break this sucker out, it's a whole thing. Plus, mine was modded. So the modification, unfortunately, took away my ability to use this on a CRT. This Neo Geo, I could only use it on a CRT if I had component. And unfortunately, a few years ago, I lost my big, nice CRTs that had component. So the ones that I have now, I don't have that. The best I can do now is S-Video. So playing it was like pretty much regulated to just on my new TV, like on my flat panel TV, or for video capture or something like that. So there was a lot of issues. But I was still sticking with it. And there's this really cool retro store that I like to go to called Founded Electronics. It's over in Watauga, close to Fort Worth. And I used to go there quite a bit. I haven't been there in a while, but I used to go there all the time. And I would see stuff there, and sometimes I would buy it. I used to make a lot more money, so I would just blow a lot of money on retro stuff. And one day I walked in there, and they had a copy of a game called Burning Fight. And Burning Fight is a beat 'em up, a 2-player side-scrolling beat 'em up, similar to like Final Fight, Streets of Rage, that sort of thing. It's not like a spectacular game, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good 2-player beat 'em up for Neo Geo. And they had it there. It was kind of janky. The cartridge, I'll show you what the cartridge looks like. This is what it looks like. The cartridge was kind of janky looking. It had some discoloration on it. The paint was coming off of the little slots on the front and on the back of it. It was not in the best shape. So I wasn't like blown away seeing this available, but it was interesting. But what got me was the price. So this cartridge, this is the US version also, and that makes a difference when you're talking about prices for Neo Geo games, because the US versions of AES cartridges are the most expensive that you could try to buy. And this was the US version of Burning Fight. Now, it didn't come with the manual or the box or nothing. It was just the cartridge. But they were selling it for $200. And you might be like, holy crap, $200 for a game that's like okay, that you know, for one game, that's a lot for an old game too. And it is a lot, but it's not a lot for this particular game. This particular game, even back whenever I ended up buying it, sold for way more than that. So it was a pretty good deal. And I was like, well, maybe I can get a new case. Like I can replace the shell if I can find one that doesn't work, and I could, or maybe there's something I can do, you know, because for $200 it was it was a pretty good deal if you're a Neo Geo collector, right? So I bought the game and immediately had buyer's remorse because I was like, $200 for this game. It's the most I ever spent on any game, on any one game. $200. But I got it home and I tried to clean it up as best I could, and there really wasn't nothing I could do about the situation with the case. But I cleaned it up as best I could, and I plugged it into my Neo Geo, and I fired it up, and it was fine. It was playing the game. It was cool. I was playing Burn and Fight. But I did start to notice as I was playing it a couple of little small graphical anomalies on the screen, like little flickering pixel here, little, line once in a while that would appear there. Just tiny little things. Very, very seldom. It wasn't like it happened a lot. It was very seldom, but it was happening. Tiny little strange graphical anomalies. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I try to clean the pins really well and reseat the cartridge, clean my slot, and still had the same thing happening. So I ended up reading a little bit online about this, and there were a lot of people that were saying that sort of thing is fairly common with Neo Geo cartridges, older Neo Geo cartridges. And unfortunately, what I was hearing was not good news. People were telling me that eventually that might get worse. Some people were saying, there was horror stories about people saying, oh, it started out like that and then it got worse and worse and worse until the game basically quit working. Some people were saying it wasn't a big deal. Some people were saying it's like something that actually could be fixed if you open the cartridge and replaced some, whatever component inside the cartridge or whatever. But all of that was like this big wake-up call for me, because I was like, wow, I'm spending $200 on a game, and this is like a money pit. This is like never gonna end. And what if this starts happening with my other games? This is crazy. It's one thing if you have something wrong with like a cartridge for the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo or something, and you paid like $25 for that game. It's one thing if it costs you $40, whatever. It's another thing if the game costs you $200. And it's entirely possible it could cost you more. And then you're not really happy with the cartridge anyway, because of the way it looks and things like that. So yeah, this was my big wake-up call with the Neo Geo. So and the other thing that I kept thinking about, the other thing that kept occurring to me was Neo Geo emulation is basically perfect. It's like perfect. Whether you're talking about emulating yourself, like with RetroArch or something like that, which is what I have fired up now. I've got a Neo Geo emulator fired up on the PlayStation Classic, so I'm just going to bring that up while I'm talking about this. So emulation for the Neo Geo is basically perfect. And I ended up buying a whole bunch of Neo Geo games on the PlayStation, on the PS4. So I've bought the games. I've bought most of the Neo Geo games that they have. I spent, it wasn't a whole lot of money, comparatively speaking, but I did buy a bunch of Neo Geo games on the PlayStation Store, and they play perfectly. I have no problems with them. I bought a really nice arcade stick for my PlayStation, so if I want to have that arcade experience, I can do that. This sort of thing. And I ended up selling Burning Fight. I told the guy what was up with it. He was fine with that. He understood. I actually sold it for less than what I paid for it. because I felt like even though the price was extremely reasonable considering what that game is, the case was weird on it, and it might have an issue that he's gonna have to fix. So I wouldn't have felt right charging some, trying to make money on that. So I basically got my money back minus a little bit. And then I sold my Neo Geo, and I sold all the games I had for it and everything to it. And that's what I used some of that money to get the digital Neo Geo games. And I really never looked back. I really never looked back on that, because it was the second Neo Geo that I owned. The first time I parted with my AES, the first one that I had, there was something that I wasn't done with. I was still wanting that Neo Geo arcade home console experience. I was still wanting to do that, because that's a console that my generation of gamer, people my age, me specifically, I have lusted over the AES my entire childhood. And it was the console that everybody wanted that nobody could get. And when I had an opportunity to get it, I got it. The first one didn't really work out that well, but I wasn't done, so I needed to fully explore that. So I got the second one, which was way better and a really good experience for the most part. But I was just never going to be able to have a decent sized library of Neo Geo games. I was never going to get the full Neo Geo experience, no matter what, because I couldn't afford the games. I didn't feel good about doing the flash cartridge. The MVS to AES conversion thing was a whole thing to itself, and I didn't want to go down that road. So I knew that the real hardware, the Neo Geo hardware, was just a little bit beyond what I was willing to do or wanting to do as far as gaming is concerned. I had to come to terms with that. This is something that I think a lot of people that get involved in retro gaming have to figure out for themselves. At a certain point, it's a bridge too far. At a certain point, it becomes too much or too expensive or too prohibitive or whatever. It becomes a problem. It becomes too much for what you're willing to do. And that's what happened. So I don't regret selling that last Neo Geo that I owned. I know the guy that bought it. I've talked with him since. He's had a great experience with it. He's really enjoyed that console. The Burning Fight cartridge that I sold has been fine. It's not been a problem for the guy that bought it. But for me, I saw a lot of things, sort of possible things that could happen in the future that I did not want to deal with, just so I could play Neo Geo games. And I wasn't going to be able to play all of them. I was only going to be able to play a few of them. And like I said, this is a platform that has been emulated extremely well. I don't have any problem playing Neo Geo games on emulators. They look perfect. They play perfect. I don't have any issue with that. There's some consoles that the emulation has just never been perfected, like the Atari Jaguar. The Atari Jaguar. Just never been perfected. The Sega Saturn has been problematic. I've had issues emulating TurboGrafx CD, Super CD, Super Graphics stuff. That seems to be pretty much resolved for the most part at this point. But my point is, there are consoles that I don't feel good about the emulation. But for Neo Geo, that is not the case. This is great. It's a console that I want to play. It's an arcade experience that I want to have. And I think for me, the decision that I had to come to was the best way to do that is through emulation. So, yes, I ended up buying a lot of these games for, I mean, they weren't very expensive. A lot of them I got on sale, and I bought them on the PlayStation platform. And having bought them and having them available on the PlayStation platform, I feel a lot better about having all these games on my PlayStation Classic here through RetroArch. But I feel like if you want to experience these older games, you have to figure out for yourself what you think the best way to do that is. And I have absolutely no problem with anybody using emulators, playing on clone consoles, playing whatever version that you can, because experiencing these games is something that I hope everybody has the opportunity to do that wants to. You know, if you find Neo Geo stuff or Sega Saturn stuff or whatever, PlayStation, whatever, you know, if you find these games appealing, then I hope you'll take the opportunity to find a way to play these games. And you might feel like you want to support the companies that release these games and things like that, so you might want to buy them if they're available on platforms where you can buy them. But that's a decision for you to make on your own as well. I'm just giving you my own personal take and my own personal story and thoughts on why I did what I did. So, yeah. So it's nice to be able to play these games. It's nice to be able to experience these games. And I do recommend RetroArch. It seems to do a great job. The core that I'm using, let me bring it up here. Let's see, where is that at? Here we go. The core I'm using is Final Burn Neo, and it seems to work really well. So yeah, you can try that out for yourself if you're so inclined. But you might find a different core that you prefer, or a different way of playing that you prefer. So anyway, that's just my thoughts and my story about what happened with my Neo Geo and with Burning Fight in particular. It was too much. It got to a point where I just was like, you know, this is too expensive, and I see a lot of problems coming with this, and I think I need to move on from it. And that's what I did, and that's why I did what I did. Some of my friends have given me a lot of hell for this because they just can't understand why I would sell my Neo Geo. But that's my explanation. So anyway, I did, before I sold it, take a whole bunch of pictures of it, and I'll share some of those with you because it was great to have a Neo Geo. It really was. It is a beautiful console. It's one of the coolest looking consoles of all of them, and it's pretty big. It's one of the bigger consoles as well. It was great to have the Neo Geo. I'm really glad that I did buy one or two of them. I'm glad that I owned it at a couple different times. But for me, it just was a little bit too much to deal with. If you have like unlimited money and you just don't care about the hassle of having to deal with some of the issues with this console, then I think you can get a tremendous amount of joy out of owning the real Neo Geo hardware. Some people do modified MVS boards and play the arcade cartridges. Some people are able to basically create like their own version of an AES out of that, and they're very happy doing that. It's definitely a lot less expensive to buy those games that way. And some people do buy those flash cartridges, those multi-carts, and they seem to most people seem to have pretty good luck with that sort of thing, if you can even find them, because they're hard to get. But for me, the best solution was, like I said, just to go with emulators. And I don't regret that at all. And I don't regret owning the Neo Geo console either. I thought it was really awesome. It was great to have that experience firsthand. And I don't regret it. So, but anyway, that's just my story about what happened with me on Neo Geo, why I don't own an AES anymore, and what I've just decided to do as far as moving on and doing other things. So I definitely still love the Neo Geo games, and you're going to see a lot of Neo Geo stuff on my channel because you know, like I said, I still love the console, I still love the games, I still love the arcade setups. Just a great platform in a lot of different ways. But anyway, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say. So thanks for watching this. I know I've been rambling for a while. I'm going to go play some Neo Geo now and enjoy Burning Fight on my emulator. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.